going to be starting the last election debate. So before I start, my name is David. I'm the chair of the elections committee. This is Jordan Wong. He is the officer that is going to be helping me, elections officer that will be helping me throughout this debate. And without further ado, let's start the presentation. So this is the agenda for today's presentation. We're going to be introducing, the candidates will be introducing themselves with a brief speech, and then we're going to be moving into the meat of it. We're going to be talking about the debate, and finally we're going to be talking about the question and answering for the audience. So meet your candidates. All right, the president candidate right here is Anika Ng. Do you want to stand up, please? Yeah, so this is Anika. And VP Human Resource, Raven Braun. All right, and Megan Hoy, Vice President Finance. All right, so for the candidate speech, let's get started with Anika.
So hello everybody, and I would just like to thank you today for coming out and taking your time to listen to me and my fellow candidates talk about our platforms. So my name is Anika, and I'm a third-year business student concentrating in operations management and MIS. I'm running for the position of BAS president for the 2018-2019 term because I believe I have the necessary skills and knowledge to lead next year's team while introducing new initiatives and building off of BAS's current success. When I retired from my competitive figure skating career in grade 12, I was ready to shift my energy, focus, and competitive edge into something else. After participating in BAS Frosh and learning about all the different student organizations within BD, I realized that student leadership would be my next endeavor. I began in my first year with the Student Marketing Association as a project manager. Through this position, I experienced what a student leadership role would entail and what working with other equally as eager students was like. I enjoyed the position so much that I immediately applied to be an executive for both SMA and YWIB, only to be turned down by both. However, this led me to apply to be an event coordinator with BAS, where I spent the year building a fundamental understanding of what components it takes to make a successful BAS operation. This past year, I've had the pleasure serving as the VP Internal Operations, where I oversaw the BAS Frosh and BAS Mentorship Program organizing committees to ensure their alignment with BAS's overall mission. In addition, I am currently the chair for a brand new event, the BAS Celebration Gala, and through this position so far, I have been able to bring my mission and my vision for this event to life with my team of directors. As president, I will not only ensure the success of all current BAS operations, but work closely with the incoming executives to create and introduce new initiatives to better serve our membership. My long-term vision for BAS is to build a stronger relationship with our student organizations as well as our student membership. I understand that this position entails hard work and dedication, and for those of you who may know me know that I have given nothing but that in my past 2 years in BAS. I am fully prepared to lead BAS as president in the 2018-2019 term. Thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you, Anika. And at this time, may I ask VP Human Resource Raven Braun to provide our audience with the speech.
So good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming here in this beautiful day outside. My name is Raven Bruin, and I am a second-year student at the BD School of Business. Throughout my 2 years here, I decided to get involved because in high school, the only thing I was really involved in was band. And I decided, I want to change and try something new. So I remember my first experience was with BAS Frosh, and ever since then, I got to meet a bunch of amazing people, and that kind of kick-started my career here. So I applied for HRSA because I was interested in human resources, and I was the marketing coordinator for Spring Soiree 2017. And after that, I decided I wanted more of a long-term position, so I applied for HR coordinator with BAS. So I've been in BAS for about less than a year now, and I want to continue on to the next step. Additionally, I work part-time at the Career Management Center, so you'll see me around at the BD Lounge, running around as an events and HR intern. So my platform, I'd like to first improve communication within the team by moving away from a wheel communication structure. So if you guys have taken 272, I'm hoping you have. It's when there's essential where the executive team is, and then the portfolios kind of let their execs know about what's happening, and then it spreads around from there. What I'd like to do is more of an open structure where coordinators are encouraged to speak with each other and to work on projects together. And I think that'll allow them to have more experience and to make better friendships. And additionally, I'd like to implement as well as enforce internal policies. This allows the team to have standard operating procedures when dealing with difficult topics such as termination. Because I know that there's it's really difficult because you get emotions involved when you have to terminate someone. So I think that it's important to have a guideline to fall back on that everybody agrees with. And third is I'd like to treat organizing committees as less of a separate entity and more of an extension of BAS by placing coordinators in specific roles. So for example, a marketing coordinator would be placed in BAS Frosh Organizing Committee instead of hiring on one externally. And I think this allows the coordinators to make new friends with the chair and the other hired positions, as well as give them more experience. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Raven. And I'm sorry I got your last name wrong, actually.
It's okay, it's a hard one.
And we're going to be moving on next. Vice President of Finance, Megan Hoy.
Hey, so hi everyone, my name is Megan Hoy. I'm a second-year business student and I'm planning to concentrate in finance and operations management, and I'm currently running for the BAS VP Finance position for 2018-2019. So this past year, I've had the opportunity to serve as the BAS Finance Coordinator, and I've been able to learn and further develop my analytical, teamwork, communication, and time management skills. So I really have BAS to thank for kickstarting my university experience, as through BAS Frosh and the BAS Mentorship Program, I've been able to see just how warm and inclusive the BD community is. And now, after working directly on the BAS team, I've seen the impact that BAS has. And as VP Finance, I want to continue to be a part of creating new additional ways to inspire and engage the BD undergrads. So now I'd like to just highlight the 3 main points of my platform. First is that I would like to improve the transparency between the BAS Finance portfolio as well as the OCs. So in the past, the OC risk and MIP person was in charge of creating a budget for their respective event. Moving forward, I'd like to see that the finance portfolio is working more directly with the OC chair and getting the chair's input into creating a budget together, so there's open knowledge and access to this budget, and that the OC chair knows exactly how much that they have to spend. Also having someone on finance sit in with the meetings will improve transparency through open communication channels and build trust, as I want to ensure that the OCs are feeling fully supported by BAS. My second platform topic is that I want to implement and emphasize the newly reconstructed financial policies. I know policies were created in the past, however, may not have been seen, and people may not have known what really existed in these policies. So this past term in my finance coordinator, I've worked with my team to restructure these policies, which I plan to really implement and emphasize, so they're more apparent to the BAS team and OCs, so they know the guidelines and procedures, which will improve accountability to their roles, as well as ensure efficient, timely, and consistent operations. So now to my last point, which is to maintain BAS's financial sustainability and stability through strategic planning and budgeting. I'm going to look at where BAS stands now as a student union and see what weaknesses and also strengths that can be improved on. I want to make sure that BAS continues to operate within budget, so in the future we are sustainable and stable financially to continue putting on such great quality events that bring the most value to the BD students. Thanks for all coming out, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
All right, Thank you, Megan. And now we're going to be moving on to the all candidates question. I will be starting with Raven, and then we'll be going down to Megan, and then to Anika, and then we're going to be cycling around like that. Okay? So let me start with Raven. Raven.
Hi.
Yeah. What do you think it means to be distinctive?
To be distinctive?
Yeah.
I think it means to be distinctive. It means to be unique and... Oh, that's a hard question. It's an interesting question.
Would you like to pass it on to the next candidates to give it a try?
Sure, I can give it a go.
Okay, Megan.
I think it's important to be distinctive in what responsibility and roles are, so people know exactly what is expected of them in their given role, to ensure that tasks and deliverables are presented efficiently and effectively, as well as on a timely manner.
Okay, that's about it. Okay. Thank you very much, Megan. I'm going to be moving on to the next question, Anika. So, Anika, do you have any strategies or methods of achieving your short-term and or long-term goals? And if, what is it?
Strategy in achieving my short
or long-term goals. How do you set yourself short-term and long-term goals?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to set those short and long-term goals. In terms of BAS for short-term goals, I think for this upcoming year, we really want to focus on reaching out to our student membership a lot more. I think from going and attending conferences all over Canada, we can really see that other faculty student unions are really reaching their student membership a lot more than BAS has been able to. So I think from learning from them and being able to implement some of the strategies that they have, for example, holding office hours, and with our new student union building, if we are able to secure a space there, we can definitely reach out to our student membership a lot better. And in addition to that, I think through our new position, our new executive portfolio, program innovation, I think now that we have that portfolio, we're going to have a lot more room and resources, like people resources, to be able to reach out to our membership and reach out to the audience that maybe we haven't been able to target before. And I think to answer the second question in terms of long-term vision, I think the president's role is really important to set that long-term vision and understand that even though we might not be able to accomplish a lot of things that we want to do this year, how can we implement certain things that the next year's following will be able to take what we've done and further it. So I think building a strategy with the new incoming team in terms of short and long-term goals will be something that's really important.
Okay. Thank you, Anika. So moving on, Raven again. So Raven, my question for you would be, in your role, who do you think will be your biggest audience? And how will you account for your audience when making decisions?
As VP HR, I think my biggest audience will be the entire team, since HR focuses more on the team itself and not our external stakeholders. I'll make sure. Sorry, can you say the second part of the question again?
Yeah, for sure. So, who do you think will be your biggest audience, and how will you account for your audience when making your decisions?
When making decisions, it's definitely important to get the opinions of everybody on the team, especially the executive council, because we will be making the big decisions. So I think when I do make a decision, it's not just me. It has to be the whole team, the whole executive council voting and agreeing upon it.
Thank you, Raven. Megan, tell me about a time when you had to get a clarification. There was something that you maybe not have understood when someone was teaching or when the professor was teaching you something. What did you do?
Okay. So, I think this year, working with BMP directly, I needed to get a lot of clarification on what exactly the things that they wanted to purchase, why did they want to purchase it? Because they can say, oh, we want to purchase this, but I'm not getting the clarity behind the reasoning why. So it's just going up and simply asking, just asking the question why. Why is this necessary? Why do you want to do this? So that I can get the necessary information for myself to get a better understanding. So really just asking questions, not assuming anything when I need clarification. Therefore, I can get any details that I need for myself in order to make decisions. And in this case, it was making budgets and approving purchases.
Thank you, Megan. So Anika, provide me of an instance when you were under pressure, and how did you overcome the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, okay. I think I had a lot of pressure to, I don't know if it's good answer. Well, I mean, I did face a lot of pressure, I think, when I was deciding whether or not to run for this role. So I think that's like one of my most recent incidences of pressure. I think that the support that I received from my current executive team was really, really helpful. And I think in facing that pressure, just knowing that you have people there to support you and people who are there to support your decisions, and no matter what you do, is really important. So, yeah, I think in terms of pressure, I usually just try to surround myself with people that I like to be around.
Thank you, Anika. Raven, how many hours are you committing, are you willing to commit to FAST on a weekly basis? And could you please explain why you chose the number of hours you chose?
As much as it takes. Okay, for like a real number,
yeah,
I would say minimum 15 hours. I feel that's reasonable. I work part-time right now, and it's 15 hours. I definitely believe in like a work-life, club balance, because I think I'm gonna burn out if I do end up too much. But I do understand that when times are very stressful and there's a lot happening, that I will put in more hours. And you know what? Like, I'd love to put in more hours because bass is something I really care about. So yeah, I don't think it would be like too difficult for me to stay up late just doing some having a meeting or anything like that.
Okay. Thank you, Raven. And Megan, imagine that you are a chef.
Sorry, what?
Imagine that you are a chef.
A chef, okay.
Okay. And you have two options: to either microwave a pre-made slice of pizza for your customer, your audience, or have the pizza half made, but in the same way. I'm not half made, but not deliverable. So what option would you choose? And I'll go over that again.
Okay.
Imagine that you were a chef and that you have two options. Either to microwave a pre-made slice of pizza for your customer, for your audience, or to have the pizza half made but not deliverable. Which choice would you choose?
So it's either microwave pre-made pizza. Is that made by me as well, or is it like delivered?
So it's made by someone else.
Okay. I think for me, well, I wouldn't know who delivered that pizza or how it was made. So if I made a half-made pizza, I don't know in what circumstance, like half-made, like if it's half-baked or like half toppings. But if I made my pizza, I would make it with love and care, and really put the best ingredients in, so it's like the best of what I can do, provided to the people that I'm serving it to, rather than getting one that's already made. I don't know what is in it. It could be bad. So I know I'm giving that, I'm microwaving and just serving it. So my answer would be I would do the half made, but
Fair.
Yeah.
But it's not deliverable. So how do you justify it
okay.
to your audience? So you're gonna be late, right? You're not gonna be able to deliver, your product in time. How do you justify it?
So I can't deliver it at all. Basically?
you're
So
you're
just
not
to
you're not
clarify.
finished making it,
All right.
right? So how will you justify that to your audience, to the customer?
I think I would want to let them know that I am working on making it the best for them. So the final product that will eventually be served, they know it's been made well, and I put in the time and effort to make it good for them.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Okay, so Anika, describe what you think it means to be an intelligent leader.
To be an intelligent leader, I think you really have to understand those who you are leading. So I think an intelligent leader would be able to kind of figure out what their team needs and what their team is looking for, and be able to build off of that. I think an intelligent leader is also self-aware, so they're aware of what they're doing right and how they can improve and what they need to work on, and how that relates back to their team, and how they can relate their strengths and weaknesses to their team's strengths and weaknesses, and really harvest that as a team.
All right, thank you, Anika. Raven, tell me about the toughest decision that you had to make in the last month.
I think the toughest decision I had to make in the last month. By last month, you mean just January?
January, yeah.
Just January.
January.
That one's personal. Can I go December maybe?
For sure.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think the most difficult one was deciding whether to take 4 classes or not. So I only ended up taking 3, but I realized that I wanted to do this position. I also wanted to work part-time. And I also wanted to get 2 business courses out of the way. So I think if I had a really hard time just saying, oh, should I take an extra elective? But I know that would take up a lot of my time. So I decided to just take 3.
Okay, thank you, Raven. And now, Megan, how have you encouraged members on your team to share their perspectives and ideas? Because when working in a team, I think it's important to share ideas, right? And so really the question is, how do you encourage your peers, your coordinators, managers, to share their perspectives, to be open, to share their ideas? And what did you do or say to encourage them to share their ideas?
Right. So I think it's just the fact of being approachable and going up to people in a friendly manner, just starting conversations, talking about what's going on, if it's in BAS, talking about what they're doing in their roles, what I'm doing, sharing what's going on so there's cross-collaboration, but also saying, oh, hey, I'm here as a friend, if there is anything going on, you can talk to me so I can hear their inputs and thoughts. So, and also sharing my inputs and thoughts too, because I think it's good to show that we're kind of the same. Sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
Of course. How have you encouraged members on your team to share their perspectives and ideas, to be open?
Right, yeah, so...
what have you said?
I think
or what would
it's
you
not
say?
so much in the terms of what I'm saying, it's how I'm approaching it and being open myself to make them feel open back to me.
So, do you remember? Do you remember of any instance in your experiences where you actually encourage team members to be more open and to provide their perspectives? And what happened?
To be the closest thing I can kind of relate back to that is just as coordinators right now, there's not tons of working together with other coordinators, so it's just being able to go and say, like, encourage them to be able to talk to me about any issues that they may have, so I can resonate and kind of try to just help them with ways that they can improve with that, and then also seeing back and maybe talking to my executive of these things, and then they can take it back to overall better the organization.
Thank you, Megan. And Anika, what are 3 words that you think best describe you and explain?
That best described me.
Yes.
I think 1 would be curious. 2, curious. I think I want to say like courageous. And then 3rd, probably like planner.
Yeah, so do you want to go ahead and explain to your audience, what you mean by each element?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think first curious is, I think this really stems from like my passion for traveling and learning about different cultures and languages and stuff like that. So I'm really interested in the different takes that people have in the world, and figuring out why they think that way or why they have certain beliefs. I think that's where my curiosity stems from. Courageous is I feel like every opportunity that comes to me, I'm always inclined to take it or go for it. I'm not the kind of person who will be like playing it safe. I'll try to always like go for an opportunity if it opens up. And I think this also stems from like my competitive figure skating background. So I do have like that competitive edge in there as well. And then the last one is planner. So those of you who may know me know that I do want to be an event planner when I graduate. So thinking about the future and planning for the future and staying organized and stuff like that is something that I enjoy doing. So, yeah.
Thank you, Anika. All right, Raven. What do you think is the least important quality of being a leader, and why?
Least important quality. So it's still pretty important, right? Like, it's not a bad quality we're talking about.
So I'm trying to say,
Oh, it's still important.
yeah, still
But it's
important,
not
but it's not the
super
most
important.
important.
I see. I think I would rank independent as a low, ranking quality. I say this because as a leader, you're not working really by yourself. You're not making decisions by yourself. As a leader, you need to take in the consideration of your team. So whether that be the people your executive council, or whether that be your coordinators, you're not working alone at all. You should be you should be taking into consideration everybody's opinion, and therefore you're not. You shouldn't be prioritizing independency. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Raven. Megan, may I ask, where would you envision yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years. So hopefully graduated, and not so that I said no. I'm hoping that after graduation, I want to take some time off and be able to travel, and I also have thought about going away across the country to teach English, because I think I want to gain the experiences of being independent, learning about other cultures as well. Well, whether I want to travel the world, but whether that be teaching or maybe a job abroad. So I want to explore, learn about other cultures, the business in other cultures, and then with that experience come back and hopefully seek a job somewhere in the finance industry.
All right, thank you, Megan. Anika, sometimes teams get off track when working towards a specific goal. or project. Describe a time when that happened, and were you able to get the team back on track? If so, what did you do, or how did you achieve it?
I think this happens all the time with a lot of teams. Is you set timelines, and sometimes things may come up that you didn't necessarily foresee. And a time that has happened is actually with my organizing committee. We did have a timeline for our awards and stuff like that. However, because this is a brand new event, we didn't necessarily realize how much has to be put into creating these awards in terms of reference and stuff like that. So recently, with my organizing committee, we really had to take a look at our timeline and reevaluate what was necessary to make the awards as best as possible. And if that takes pushing back the timeline a little bit to make our awards what we foresaw originally, then that's what it takes. So I think it's really about coming together as a team and just evaluating where went wrong and what you can do better next time.
Thank you, Anika. So Raven, describe what gender equality means to you.
Gender equality means being unbiased towards how many ever genders that you personally I respect anybody who thinks there's this many genders, there's that many genders. It doesn't matter. I think it's more you're focusing on the qualities of the person themselves and not what they identify as. So that would be gender equality to me.
Thank you. Megan, give an example of how you think about your audience before communicating with them. What factors influence your communication?
I think as a future VP Finance, I would definitely consider the students as a big audience, because a lot of what we do is for the students. The events that we put on are for the students. So thinking about what is going to bring the best value to them, and how will it be impactful. And I'm sorry, what was the last part about the communication?
What factors influence how you communicate with others?
Okay. And then just making sure that I'm transparent and open with everything that I want and what the plans are set in stone, so it's clear to the students or the other executives or other business clubs that supports of these decisions that have been made.
Right. Thank you, Megan. And Anika, speaking with the audience right now, and being a presidential candidate, I just want to ask, do you prefer communicating frequently online through social media platforms with your team, or do you prefer more communication live in person? Or otherwise speaking, what communication channel do you prefer the most and why?
I always prefer in-person communication, and the reason for that is because in person you're able to give way more context than you would be able to online. Online you aren't able to see the person's emotions, you aren't able to see how they're reacting to the information you're giving, and with that comes miscommunications and lack of context, and I feel like a lot more problems arise when there's only online communication versus if you're meeting in person. So, yeah.
Thank you, Anika. Raven, what do you hope to get out of this position?
Of course, experience is one thing, but one thing that I'm really looking forward to is the relationships that I'll develop with everybody. Especially I feel like the executive council will be sort of our small little family that's my home away from home. I think that would be super cool. Additionally, I want to see my coordinators and director, develop throughout the year, and I think it'll be very rewarding for me to see them, branch out and try other things, or even apply for VPHR next year. That would be so cool.
Megan, what do you think is the most important thing in terms of building long-term relationships?
Again, touching back to it is always transparent. I think it's important to be honest from the start to build the foundation to build a solid foundation for the long term. In terms of in this role, it's because we want to keep building our relationship with SFSS as well as SEO, as they're a huge impact to us, making sure that when we're asking for sponsorship, we're being clear and we're showing them about our budgets and what we intend to do, because it's important that right off the bat, everything is clear with them so that there's no confusion in the long run and that the trust has already been built now for the future.
Thank you, Megan. Anika, tell me about a situation in which you had to adjust quickly to changes in team priorities. For instance, there's a new deadline that just came up and you guys just remembered about it. How did it affect you?
This has actually happened constantly with our Bass Celebration Gala organizing committee, as Matt is making that face. Again, this is a brand new event, so it's never been done. So I think there's been so many challenges that have arisen throughout our term so far, and we just have to keep adjusting and keep reevaluating what we're doing. And like I said before with the awards, that wasn't necessarily a high priority, but because we realized we weren't able to hit the timeline, we were like, okay, now this is a huge priority, and we kind of pushed everything back. So I think being able to adapt and adjust that way in the organizing committee has really helped me. So.
Thank you, Anika. Raven, what do you think is the most important thing that you will be bringing to the Bass Executive Council?
I see myself as a relaxed, humorous guy. So I think a little bit of comic relief is important to any team to make sure that we're not always super serious. I mean, when we're getting things done, we gotta be serious. But I think it's not a good team dynamic if everybody's just like having no fun and just being super intense all the time. So I think that's what I would bring.
Right. So thank you to all three candidates. All candidates question period is now over. And now we're going to be moving up into the next part of our presentation. And the Elections Committee officer, Jordan, will be going over. So you're going to...
Yeah, so I'll be asking questions only to Anika.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you'll have 15 minutes. Nicole.
Sorry.
I'll ask 15 minutes.
For all the questions?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right, so first question. What do you think will be the biggest challenge facing Bass in 2018-2019, and how will you overcome that challenge?
I think so far there has been a huge push in Bass to better serve our membership than we currently are, and reaching out to those audiences that we haven't been able to reach out to before. So I think one of the platforms that Ashley had last year as president was making Bass a little bit more accessible to our student membership. And I feel like as an executive team, we haven't been able to fully reach our potential in being accessible. So I think continuing that is something that is going to be a challenge this year. And how to overcome it, was that the second part? How to overcome it, I think that goes back to the long-term vision, is just really creating a plan with our executive team that will be able to transfer to the next years coming, and that they will be able to build off of.
So explain with supporting evidence why you should be the president of Bass.
I think as an event coordinator going to VP Internal Operations, I have the most experience with all of the Bass operations. I have been a part of every single Bass operation, including our brand new event, BCG, So I think with my experience in all of our operations, I'll be able to see our weak points in those operations and how we can better improve them.
So you mentioned that you have strong conflict management skills. Explain how you would handle a conflict between two executives who are in strong disagreement upon the approval of an event.
Your approval of an event. I think, like with my experience as internal operations, that's something that I had to deal with a lot, was conflict between the OC and BAS, if there was any. So I think using those conflict management skills with the executives, I would encourage like an open and honest discussion and get them in a room with myself and probably Raven, who becomes VP HR, to have an honest conversation and figure out why there is conflict and how we can resolve that.
So you mentioned that the president of BAS is responsible for maintaining team cohesiveness. As a leader, how do you find team cohesiveness?
Team cohesiveness. I think with team cohesiveness, it's ensuring that context is given to everyone in the team and that they understand why decisions are being made. And so I think with that context given will enhance team cohesiveness. And I think when we hire our executive team, ensuring that they are the best candidates and they are extremely passionate for BAS will also increase that as well.
So in your application, you mentioned building a stronger BAS culture. What culture and values do you aim to achieve as president?
I think in terms of culture, like every team is going to have their own culture once we create the team. But for me personally, I really value like hard work and dedication. So I think in terms of culture, I would really like to see that from all of my executives, and I would like to see that trickle down to their coordinators as well.
So if you can only choose one word, how would you describe your leadership and explain why you chose that word?
One word to describe leadership. I would say communication. I feel like as a leader, communication is really important. I think from my experience, a lot of the times when conflict does arise between a leader and whoever they're leading, is because there's a lack of confidence and there's a lack of communication between the team. So for me personally, I value communication, and I feel like that's really important to have with a team.
So when you come across a problem and there are no resources to guide you in your decision making, how would you make that decision?
I would probably go off of my best judgment and my experience that I've had. If there's no one to guide me, I think that would be the only way, is to just kind of base it off of what you have experienced already.
So what's the most important aspect about communication and why?
About communication, I think it's, like as I said before, context. And yeah, like a lot of, almost all conflicts come from a lack of context. So I think with open communication, you can really reduce that and reduce conflict.
So in your application, you mentioned that the second most important component of your portfolio is having a vision. What does that mean?
So vision would tie directly back into the mission. So the mission for BAS is to, I have it written down here, enhance through quality student-run events programs for undergraduate students. So I think our vision for this year would be to figure out a way to fulfill the mission.
So explain how you will organize the events hosted by BAS to ensure they run smoothly and efficiently.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Explain how you will organize the events hosted by BAS to ensure they run smoothly and efficiently.
I would organize them. I mean, I guess they're run by their specific chairs or like the VP events or VP program innovation. So I think through working directly with them and ensuring that the mission and vision from BAS is clearly communicated to them and to the VP internal operations as well would be one way to ensure that they're successful.
And final question, how will you handle a conflict between two levels within the organization, for instance, like between a VP and a coordinator?
Conflict between a VP and a coordinator? I think it would be similar to the two executives, except I think personally I would be a little bit harder on the VP because they are supposed to be in that role model position and they're supposed to be in that leadership position. So facilitating a conflict management session between them and ensuring that the conflict is resolved, and then having a private conversation with that VP after to see what went wrong and how they can work on their leadership skills from there.
Right, thanks. I'll pass it to David, who will now
All right.
do HR.
So, sorry for the order right here, because I'm actually going to be asking Raven first, and then with Megan. So, Raven, what does nurturing a positive culture mean to you, and how do you go about creating a positive work environment?
Being supportive is the number one thing. Definitely also and by being supportive, I mean like being accessible and always, like I would say praising the achievements of your team members. I think it's super important for people to get motivated and feel like they're part of like a positive environment when people notice the things that they're doing. For example, say someone was able to raise a lot of money as a CR coordinator, then we would do something like a shout out that says, hey, so and so did this, so and so, like good job. I think it's definitely super important just to get like recognition for people.
How will you be handling the recruitment in BAS differently compared to previous HR human resource vice presidents in BAS?
I remember last year the recruitment timeline was a little tight, so I think I'll definitely try to plan it out better. I wouldn't say better, but I'll try to stick to it as best as I can, because I know that things do come up, timelines do get pushed back. What I would do is ask for the help of my of the executive council, because I'm just one person. I don't think it's possible for me to do everything alone. Definitely also with the help of my director when I do hire them on, we'll be able to work together to set strict timelines for recruitment.
Name a time when there was a human resource conflict, and how were you able to manage and solve it?
So far in this year, there haven't actually been many conflicts. So I don't think I can really answer that question, because there just wasn't anything that I was a part of that I had to resolve a conflict.
Yeah. So how about last year? Do you have any experiences, perhaps resolving a human resource conflict in the previous year, or do you have like any experiences in the past, basically?
Mm-hmm. So I was the marketing coordinator for Spring Soiree, and since organizing committees are small, you don't really have like a set human resources person. But there were conflicts, especially with like one person's vision for the event and the other person's vision for the event. So how I played a part in that, like I always see myself kind of as a mediator. So I asked for both people's opinions, and to talk to me about like what's going on, and then I try to convey their message in like a more neutral way to the other person, so that person kind of I would say that the messages are more standardized, and so both parties can understand what the other person is trying to say.
Just briefly explaining, do you yourself have a method or a strategy of how you go about specifically and handling conflicts and managing and resolving the conflict? Like what steps would you take?
First, identify the source of the conflict. So it's important to know exactly why this person's feeling that way and why the other person is feeling that way, and see where the two are clashing. The next step would be to set those people to the side. Like, I don't want everybody seeing that I'm pulling these, like I would do it very discreetly, because I don't want the rest of the team you know, like it's good to be transparent, but it's kind of embarrassing if I tell those people, hey, can you like come with me right now and we'll have to talk this through. So setting a time and place is important for those two parties to talk it out. If that doesn't work out, then I would definitely need someone else helping me. So whether that be my director or my president, it's important to get like a second opinion.
How will you acknowledge the hard work and success of your team members? Is performance and success defined by money, or what is your definition?
Well, since we are a not-for-profit, I would say there's no like monetary awards given out, at least in Bass. But for recognition and their success, I think just telling that person how, like, specifically of course, like, I was reading the other day, like, how to give proper recognition, and one thing that it said was, like, say, oh, you did a good job on this, keep it up, and yeah, it's just basically like saying specifically what they did and acknowledging what they did. Sorry,
Okay.
I went on a tangent there.
How will you go about in designing and implementing an environment where individuals are comfortable voicing their opinions?
So what we've been doing right now is check-ins with the coordinators, and I think that's a great way for people to voice out their opinions. Another thing I really want to do is team meetings, so like having the whole Bass team meet together, and each person saying, what they're concerned about, what they accomplished this month, and what they're planning to do. And I think it's great because it lets them vent out to the whole team, and the whole team can offer their support.
How would you repair a conflicting relationship between two members, for example, two executives?
Okay, if we close the door or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Sounds really funny.
So, I'm just gonna go over the question again. Take your time. How would you repair a conflicting relationship between two team members? We're talking about, for example, two executives.
I'll just be really practical here. I think I'd take them both out to go eat. Nothing is better than having food. So I think that's super important, and like having that casual environment just to relax, and like I think it's really important to get away from like the source of conflict. So I'm guessing the source of conflict would be like a Bass thing, right? So taking that out and going somewhere relaxing would be nice. Definitely have like a place where you can just talk it out, and especially with me there as the mediator, I think it would be positive for both people.
So you mentioned, throughout our debate that as a vice president of human resource, you tend to be more of a mediator. In what situations would you move from mediator to arbitrator?
I would say that's kind of like the last step when I tried everything that I could, and these two people, the two parties, are still in conflict. That's definitely when it's time to step up and really make decisions without, based on my own experience. Sorry, but yeah, it's definitely like a last resort.
What would be your approach to team members who have not been committed to their roles?
Can you say the question again, please?
What would what would be your approach to team members who have not been committed to their roles?
I definitely want to implement and enforce a 3-strike policy. So I don't want this to sound like it's super strict and intense, but the first step of the policy is like a small warning and a talk and see what's going on. The second would be a more serious talk, and that would be with another executive member, perhaps their VP or the president. And third would be like if we've exhausted like everything, we've tried talking to them, we've tried finding why they're not as committed anymore, then we would begin the termination process.
How will you inform or communicate to your team members about your policies?
Hopefully, there will be like a written manual. So
it's like a book that you're going to be distributing to every...
Yeah, well, I wouldn't print it out because, we like to save paper. So it's definitely like an online resource. I'm still not 100% sure if this would be available to everybody, or if it's just like an internal thing for our team. But I would like it so that each coordinator or each new member takes a look at the manual and sign off on it, and just acknowledge that they've read it.
How would you reinforce the policies that you implement?
Reinforcing the policies, the most important thing regarding policies is that everybody agrees on it. So, especially the executive council. So, of course, the policies won't pass without everybody, voting on it and agreeing. And by doing that, by getting the executive council on board, it'll trickle down to the coordinators and directors, and since those VPs will pass it on to them.
All right. What do you find is the biggest flaw in the current human resource policies, and what are you committed to changing?
I think the biggest flaw is that they're not written down. As far as I know, there isn't like a set policy book already, so that's why I'd like to implement that.
What do you find? What do you define effective communication as, or how do you achieve effective communication?
Effective communication is when the party that you're sending that information to gets it like the way that you want it to appear.
So please elaborate. Please explain what you mean by that.
Of course, I was just going. So by that I mean if I say something, like Anika said regarding context, I want that person to be able to receive what I'm trying to say in the context that I'd like to say it. So an important thing, especially with heavy topics, is to meet with that person in person, so that they'll understand, through my body language, through my tone, and as well, so I can understand where they're coming from. That's how effective communication would happen in person. And for online, because I know that most of us, chat on Slack or Facebook, definitely being quick to reply is super important, because, when you take a long time to reply, that person can misread it as like, oh, this person's not interested, or this person's too busy for what I have to say. Yeah.
How will you handle a conflict between two levels within the organization, between a coordinator and a director? And would it be any different than when you were handling the previous situation between two executives?
It would be a little different. By director, did you mean VP or did you just mean director?
Vice president and coordinator.
Coordinator, I see. Well, it depends like where the conflict first started. If it was the vice president clashing, like if the vice president was obviously wrong, then there would, be then I would have a strict talking to with the vice president and try to mend that bond between the two. But if that coordinator is being rude, or etc., or just like, or if the conflict is coming from the coordinator, then I would speak to that coordinator without the vice president or with my director, and see how we can mend that that wound between those two.
Are you aware of the privacy and information policies in place to protect students online? Because you are going to be the human resource or the candidate for human resource, right? And you will be sending perhaps really important information online. So my question is, are you aware of the privacy and information policies that are set here?
I am aware of some of them. Of course, I'll have to read into it more.
Right.
But also from my time,
Just
okay.
finish.
But also from my time as HR intern at CMC, I know that you can't have like student information on anything other than SFU, like a website. So you can have information on SFU Vault, but important information can't be placed on like Drive because that's hosted somewhere else.
Thank you. So at this point in time, I'm just going to be passing it back to Jordan. And Jordan will be asking questions for Megan.
Okay, so in your application, you mentioned ensuring a healthy operating budget. What was the estimated previous budget, and what do you mean by ensuring a healthy operating budget?
I can't speak on the total budget. It is confidential, but just making sure. I think it's gonna help with my first platform point, which the finance portfolio is directly working in setting the budget with the OC, because this way it will be transparent. There won't be any misunderstandings or miscommunication in what they have to spend. In the past, I know that it wasn't as transparent, and therefore the BAS finance portfolio didn't have as much oversee in the budgeting, which may have caused for not as efficient spending. So by my implementation of having the future director of finance working with the OC consistently and also sitting in on their meetings, they're gonna have the openness to ensure that budgets or spending is within budget, to make sure that there is so the variances in overspending are high, and so that there is all the spending is within, so we're not going out of budget.
So what are your procedures to protecting the confidential information of the operating budgets?
Procedures. I am not 100% sure right now as if on the Drive or if are the budgets accessible by everyone. I don't believe they are. Right now it's set up in a Dropbox that I see it as well as Matthew. So it's confidential there, but obviously I don't want to keep it that everything's hidden from everybody. So what I plan to do is update the execs on the budget so that they are aware of where money is being spent, but that they don't have full access in changing any of the budgets or anything. And so by showing them, they are going to be aware, just so they know what is being spent and why it's being spent.
Sorry, I just want to bring up a comment towards that question. When you put something, you mentioned confidential information on Dropbox. that information is actually going to US servers. So it's not actually really that confidential anymore. If so, I recommend perhaps encrypting the files because through encryption, you have a second layer of protection that will ensure confidentiality. That is if you do decide to continue to use Dropbox.
So I'm not super techie like that. Maybe the future like systems development can help me in making encryptions. I personally don't know how to do that, and I'm not really entirely sure how Dropbox is, but so
it's actually really simple. Like,
I think we'll hold any comments to the end. We'll just
yeah, you can
continue.
maybe
Yeah.
talk about that at a different time with me and show
For
me
sure.
how that can work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you have any volunteer or work experience in bookkeeping?
I do not. Most of my experience has come from my past term as finance coordinator, but I believe because Matthew gave me the opportunity to work with BNP, so in terms of making the budget, I've gotten more experience in that, and as well as how to use just the accounting softwares, inputting all the information. But however, previous outside experience, I do not have.
So, what do you think is the biggest challenge for BAS from a financial perspective? And what investments do you propose to mitigate those challenges?
So a weakness that I see is that a lot of our money that we rely on is coming from sponsorship, which has worked well in the past. We've been getting sponsorship. However, there are always the risk that we may not get as much sponsorship from externals as we have in the past. I think as we look to develop BAS as an SFU, I think something that I know has been in the talk and has mentioned in the app is like possibly implementing a levy, which will provide more financial stability. It's obviously not something that will be implemented this term. I think it's something that BAS has been looking into, and we can further look into that, maybe talk with SEO and their thoughts, talking with SFSS as well as how they have become a student union like that and how they implemented their levy. So can you repeat? I just want to make sure I answered.
What is the biggest challenge for BAS from a financial perspective? And what investments do you propose to mitigate those challenges?
Oh yeah, so the weakness I saw was that it with like finances that we rely so heavily on the sponsorship, and then to mitigate, it's something that's long-term vision to ensuring the stability is looking possibly at a levy.
So while looking for bookkeeping for BAS Gala, you noticed that $5 went missing because you provided the wrong change. How do you handle the situation?
So generally what happens is the person will buy and then they submit a reimbursement that will be in form of a check. So in terms of like just handing out cash, BAS doesn't really do that, so I don't foresee that happening within BAS's organization. So it's kind of hard to answer that as we don't just deal with a lot of cash like that.
So in your application, you mentioned personal development. In what ways will you contribute to learning experiences of other BAS members interested in finance?
Yeah, so I think as being a VP, it's a lot of leadership, and it's like being a role model to my director as well as a coordinator, which I look forward to. Sorry, can you repeat it once more?
So in your application, you mentioned personal development. In what ways will you contribute to learning experiences of other BAS members interested in finance?
Okay, yeah, so working with my portfolio, I think it's going to be a learning experience for me as well as them. I want to learn and grow with my portfolio. It's going to be personal development for me in terms of being able to learn, being able to teach what I know to them, as well as just working on further developing my communication skills, not only with my one portfolio, but with the whole exec team as a whole.
What's the most important word that describes your role as VP Finance?
I want to sound repetitive, but I honestly think being transparent is really important. As that, I don't want to make it seem like I'm making all the final decisions without sharing to others. Why? Because then it's just not healthy for an organization to do that. As VP Finance, I want to make sure that there's awareness to where the budget is being spent, why resources are being allocated as they are, and I want to show that it's because that we're looking for ways to effectively use our resources ultimately to bring the most value to the BD undergraduates.
So how has your time as a finance coordinator prepared you for VP Finance?
As I mentioned, I definitely have learned new skills like the basics, obviously, of how to read a budget, how to better use Excel from what they teach you in 237, and also different things like just how to format a pitch, how to pitch, and how to strategically structure my thoughts into how to allocate money, how to project long-term vision and short-term event budget.
So in your application, you mentioned strong communication channels. What does strong communication channel mean?
Again, it's just having the channels there. I believe said that for the OCs and BAS finance portfolio. So they're working together collaboratively instead of almost two separate entities, as well as just so, as they both mentioned, the communication and context is there so people can fully understand each other.
And final question, what information do you think should not be included when presenting financial statements to regular BAS members?
What information should not be presented? I think that, I think it's important that people know, but I guess people don't generally need to know exactly how much BAS has to operate with. I think that should be kept confidential, obviously, and if people see how much is in the BAS account, they may say, why can't we spend more on this or that? And just to keep that part confidential between the BAS finance portfolio and other execs like president and HR.
So do we move on?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you all three candidates. Raven, thank you. Megan, thank you. Anika, for answering the questions. Moving forward, we will now have the audience question period. So does anyone? Yes, Deborah?
So I have a question for Raven. So in your platform, you mentioned placing most of the coordinators in role for OC, so they're treated more of an extension of BAS. How specifically do you think this will help them be more introduced to your organization? And secondly, usually in the past, when we have people that are coordinator as an OC, it increases the workload. So how would you prevent that coordinator from burning out?
So I'll answer your second question first. So regarding the burnout, when they're placed in that OC, I'd like for them to focus their attentions on doing that function. Since we are getting the director positions now, that is that's under the VP and a little above the coordinators. That's an extra hand that can help out. It'll make things run more smoother. As for your first question regarding how that will like integrate them more in, I'd also like to invite them to come to our big team meetings. I think that's really important for them to voice out their opinions and how they feel. Additionally, since we're placing coordinators into the organizing committee, it'll kind of give us more of a grasp on how the organizing committee is operating. So, for example, if we put, as Megan said, like if we put in a finance coordinator into that organizing committee and set the budgets with them, it's more they have more accountability, and we'll know more of like what's going on inside the organization or in the organizing committee. So, does that answer your question?
Sort of. And I guess to add on to that, could you argue that that's maybe taking away opportunities from other people? For example, instead of having separately a marketing coordinator in Bath and a marketing coordinator on MC.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that does take away positions from other people, but that's just kind of a consequence of that. But I think that the pros will benefit, and the pros will outweigh the cons, and so that's why I'm willing to try it out.
Question for Amanda. Thanks so much for your speech. You mentioned you're a big risk taker, you're very bold, open to new challenges. Being vice president, you know a lot of different stakeholders. Do you foresee any challenges with being the kind of person that says yes to a lot of open opportunities? You know, and there's any challenges with being stakeholders?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with being someone who takes opportunities, it's also like to counteract that. You also have to be someone who is reasonable and someone who can also analyze what that opportunity is. And I think that even goes for taking president on. Like I did do an analysis, and the reason why I was a little bit hesitant at first is I was thinking about the opportunity cost of taking president on and what other opportunities I would give up necessarily. So I think in this position, as long as we can analyze what opportunity to take on and how that would benefit the organization and how that would outweigh the cons of it, I think I am able to do that as well.
Okay, Jazz?
So my question is geared more towards the finance and President Mika. Matthew actually did an amazing job last year making a relationship with the Student Society. You guys both mentioned working with the Student Society, so how do you guys plan on improving this relationship?
I think I'd like to know and learn about how they like have been successful as a student union as we try to progress into establishing Bath more of an SFU. So learning from them, hearing what they have to say, as well as attending like the open like meetings that SFSS provides, so we can hear and also voice like Bath's ideas and work with them to hopefully generate new ideas to create new events or opportunities.
Yeah, I think with that being said, like yes, Matthew and Ashley did a really good job, but I also think Ginny did an amazing job of being a really good business representative. So hopefully we are lucky enough to have an equally as good business representative, not Matthew, he's doing good. There to support us as well, and I think our relationship with SSS will just be able to continue to grow, and I think open communication between the SSS and VAS as well is really important.
And Bethany?
Okay, so this is a question for all three of you guys. Before you answer this question, I want you guys to take a minute to think about it. And when you answer this question, I want you guys to answer it in one sentence and one sentence. So to the three of you guys, why are you running for your respective positions? So all of you guys will answer. So take some time to think about it. You can respond right away. So in one sentence, can you tell
exactly why you guys are running for your respective positions.
I can answer first. I'm running to continue to support BAS.
I want to continue making an impact to students so we can further evolve the BD community.
BAS is my family.
And sorry, I saw a hands up over there first.
This is a question specifically for Megan. If you do have coordinators or director who are more senior in terms of experience and from other organizations, how would you generate respect from, I guess it would be your followers, as a leader who perhaps have less experience in this specific branch?
Well, for coordinator, it's more of a learning position. So it's more the director who would, we would look for someone with more experience in terms of accounting and bookkeeping. In that case, I don't think, yes, it's coordinator, director, VP, but I think also it's not that I don't want to be yes, the VP Finance is in charge, but I want it to be a collaboration. So we're working hand in hand together. Me and the director almost working on the same level, talking and providing insight together, making decisions as one.
Sorry, what's your name? Mavis, yeah. So Mavis is...
Question for Raven. So as VPHR, you'll have a lot of different people that you're working with, but none of these people are getting paid to do their job. They're taking on a responsibility just like you guys are, while still managing your life, your school, friends, family. How are you going to keep these people motivated when it's things like final season or what else have you, like CPA recruit, things like that?
One important thing is team socials. So there's no I think that team socials will allow the team to bond as well as give people the time to relax and have some time away from exams and stuff. I mean, I know that's difficult because sometimes there's a social, right, and you don't want to go to it because you have all these deadlines. So definitely it's optional. Other than that, I'd like to extend a year to everybody in the team. So I'm always on social media usually, and I can be contacted on Slack really quickly. So if people are stressed out, I'd like them to reach out to me, or even if I can see that they're not participating as much in in the chat or whatever, I'd reach out to them and see how they're doing. Maybe have a quick coffee chat if after class if it's convenient for them, and also keeping them motivated by recognizing what they've been doing, even the smallest things.
Sorry, there was a question over Josh? Yep.
So I have one more question for Raven. It involves motivating as well. So, Raven, as HR director, you're going to be hiring. So, how will you motivate first and second year students to apply for coordinator positions?
Since I'm a BMP mentor, I've already been talking to some of the mentees, and I've been like, hey, I mean, it's not 100% I'm going to get the position, but there are these opportunities that, BAS is hiring soon. I've been telling all the mentees I've been talking to, hey, there's going to be a new term, so in the spring we're going to be hiring a new set of coordinators, and I think it's a great experience. You can help out with BAS Josh, et cetera, and it's a nice long-term commitment, but you also develop really strong relationships in BAS.
Matthew?
Yeah, so I have a question for Anika. So I noticed that there were no applications open for your representatives. So how are you planning on collecting feedback and representation from your membership from here on?
Okay, I think for the year representatives, as in my application states and from what Megan had mentioned, is what we are going to be I want to be looking into having a levy committee. So I really feel like if we do hire year representatives, that they would be really useful there. Because I feel like in the past, the year representatives, although they do collect the information from our students and give us the feedback, they don't really do as much, and they don't really have anything else to do, and so I feel like giving them another responsibility, another position will allow them to be a little bit more active in BAS, I think. So I think, to answer your question, I think we would be considering hiring year representatives for not only collecting information, but also for the
Another question?
I have a question on behalf of Jared to Raven. So could you describe this year's culture and what changes you envision for it?
This year's culture, I would say inclusive. That's my number one word for this year's culture. And by that I mean everybody is so friendly within BAS. I can talk to anybody about anything and I wouldn't feel like an outsider. Other than that, I would say we're very dedicated. And that's through, the programs that we've been running. So, like, I would say BAS Frosh, BMP went really well. BCG is going to go really well. And I think BAS culture also embodies BD culture. So by that I mean, like, our thing is, like, be engaged, right? So I can see members in BAS being engaged in everything. I see people, in different student clubs, different organizing committees. And I think we have our members have a far reach throughout BD. Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
What changes
what would I change?
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think I would change much because I really do like the culture, and that's why I want to continue being a part of BAS. The only thing I guess I would change is, or improve upon, is communication and making it less of like a structured communication and more like everybody's, more of an open communication.
Okay, so I have a follow-up from Jared. He asks, so when you do recruit, what factors will you be looking for to carry on those changes that you envision?
When I'm recruiting, I'm not going to be looking for people with the highest, the most amount of skill, the most amount of experience. I'm definitely going to be looking for people who take ownership of the responsibility. So ownership means even though you don't have those necessary skills right away as you're hired, you're willing to work for it and you have the drive to get those skills and to be able to fulfill your position as best as possible. So this translates in so many different ways. It translates into how you perform your roles and how you're also, how you are as a person, because yeah, that's how I would answer it.
Jared says, good job.
Thank you, Jared.
Sir, first I'd like to apologize. What's your name again? Deborah. Okay. Yes.
So question for Anika. With the new role of VP Project Innovation, what are specific ways or metrics you can use to measure the success of that role in the first semester?
Sorry.
What are specific ways that you would measure the success of the VP Project Innovation?
Yeah, so I think for that role, because it's brand new, I would definitely look to who we hire for the VP position in terms of what they want to do for that role. But personally, what I have so far envisioned for that role is to use it to better reach out to the audience that we haven't been able to target yet. So I think if they do end up hosting different programs or initiatives, really measuring the attendees who come out to those events and seeing if they were previously involved students or if they're new students that maybe have not been a part of BAS before.
As the student union for OBU students, do you see BAS playing the advocacy role towards the faculty on behalf of students?
An advocacy role
for students towards the faculty if there was any issue to arise.
If there's any issue to arise. BAS playing an advocacy role for the students? Yeah, I think as like a faculty-student union, that is kind of part of our responsibility, is to be the voice of the students. So to answer your question, yes.
Do you have any specific examples or in your experience?
I think if it is in terms of like the school, like okay. No, I haven't had any experience. However, I feel like if there was an issue or conflict between the school, BAS would step in and definitely support the business students and be the voice for them.
Sorry, did that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you so much.
Yeah. And Bethany?
Going back to Raven, I know you mentioned earlier about wanting to shift it from structured communication to open communication, but those two terms are very vague. I don't know exactly what that means, so can you tell me concretely what you define as currently structured communication, and moving forward, how you'll be applying and implementing open communication and what that means in terms of how BAS operates?
So by structured communication, I mean that wheel communication system. So you have like the central conduit, which is the executive council, and you have the different portfolios surrounding it. So what's happening right now is that the information from the portfolios are going to the VP. The VPs discuss it amongst themselves, and that information travels to the other portfolios. So what I saw this year was that there wasn't enough communication between coordinators to other coordinators and other portfolios. It felt very siloed, and the coordinators didn't really know what the other coordinators in the other portfolios were doing. So I thought that, hey, that sounds like something that might be nice to change, because it'll increase culture and increase cohesiveness if coordinators are speaking amongst each other instead of having it go through their vice presidents. So how I would apply that, I would definitely like to set up like small projects for coordinators to tackle on together. So that will encourage them to communicate with one another more, I wouldn't say casually, but more openly. And moving from there, if there's different ways of taking on responsibilities. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but essentially that's what I would like to do, to have like little teams first that are made up of coordinators from different portfolios and have them do like little projects. Yes.
Will these projects be mandatory for coordinators?
These projects would not be mandatory, but highly encouraged. So I did think about this the other day. We're not forcing coordinators to come into these and do them, but it would be like we would have coordinators volunteer to take a part of them. So an example would be like hosting a small team event. We'd have coordinators plan that instead of like one portfolio planning that themselves.
Yeah, question for Megan. I think that wanting to shift toward more transparency is great, but like you mentioned as well, like big goals to tackle in a short amount of time. So what do you think is achievable for you this year, and how will you measure that success?
I definitely think it is achievable to improve the communication between the finance portfolio and OCs. In terms of measuring, I think that would be looking back at previous year actual reports and how to see if there is any improvement in terms of spending more efficiently and effectively, looking to see if variances have been improved, if we are close within budget, and also talking with the OC chairs themselves, how they feel having a finance director working directly with them, how do they feel it either brought benefit to them or maybe not so much, to see how we can improve that if it's worth keeping to implement in the future.
And we actually have about 10 minutes left, so thank you, Matthew, for your question. I just want to ask, is there anybody that hasn't asked any questions that I want to ask right now? And sorry, what's your name?
Laura.
Laura? Okay, Laura, so go ahead.
So this question is for Raven. You mentioned in your application that you wanted to put in a policy booklet. I was just wondering what type of policies you wanted to put in, why, and to follow up with that, how you plan to enforce these policies?
Okay, so the first, I'd like to put in policies for difficult situations. So the number one thing would be termination. Why I'd like to put this policy in is because you let your emotions get in the way sometimes when you deal with difficult topics. So I think it's important to have something to fall back on and have like a guideline to go upon that everybody has voted on. So, and that branches off to your was it third question, how to enforce it, because I think when everybody's on board with it, then that's how it will be enforced. So these policies will be voted upon by the executive council, of course. So if they vote upon it and agree on it, it'll trickle down to their coordinators, to the directors and to their coordinators, and because since they agree with it, then they'll definitely pass it on to their to the people below them. Does that answer it?
Is there anybody else that hasn't asked any questions yet? Matthew?
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a question from Joanna for Megan. Yeah, so she asked, you mentioned there will be changes to management of the finance portfolio. How will you effectively communicate those changes to the rest of BAS and your peers?
Significant changes to how the operations are, or
well, like you said, management. So you wanted to make it more transparent. Also, some points on your platform. So how are you going to communicate those changes?
Again, by making sure that the budgets are effectively communicated within the executive team, so they see what's being spent on. I think that I think that will help. Just so the whole exec can see why money is being allocated. So I feel like my previous answers also touched base on this.
I think more specifically then in terms of the addition of the director of finance role, how are you going to communicate who is the person being reported to for what?
So hopefully the director, looking to have the director be more in charge of the day-to-day operation, whereas VP is looking at planning, strategically looking at the long-term financial sustainability and stableness of BAS. So in terms of I think also enforcing the policies at the beginning of the term so that people know who exactly is in charge of what and who they need to go talk to. As for like the reimbursement policies, for example, there's a policy set for internal, so the BAS team, and then as well as the OCs, making sure that both the BAS and OCs know and are familiar with these so that they know the guidelines and that they go to the director for these reimbursements. If there's any disputes that they want to go to, also an email has to be sent. So just communicating and emphasizing these guidelines at the beginning so it's enforced on what is expected of them.
I have another question.
For sure.
So as a faculty student union, we are representing BAS, so the undergrad societies and like business clubs. So as part of that, what are your plans for providing support to those business clubs financially?
I think that's gonna have to come with possibly implementing the levy. Maybe we can look to see how in the future that the business clubs are coming to us for the funding, and then we allocate the money to them and supporting them that way, similar to how we go to SFSS now. So I think that's definitely a long-term vision for BAS financially.
Last one more.
Okay.
Okay, last one is for Anika. So what is your 5-year vision of BAS? I know you touched on your 1-year vision, but what's your 5-year vision, and what's your plan to move BAS towards that?
Yeah, so part of my long-term vision is to build a stronger relationship with our membership, as well as the student organizations that we are the umbrella organization for. So that is a long-term vision, and I think to work towards there, I think with what we've done in this past year as executives, we're already on our way there. So I think building off of that, for example, our program innovation portfolio, hopefully they'll be able to build new initiatives and create new events that will reach audiences that we haven't been able to touch before. And then I think, as Megan had just stated, once we do finally get our levy committee, and if we are able to implement a levy, then we'll be able to better support our student organizations under BAS.
Laura?
So question for Raven. Confidentiality is a big part of the HR portfolio, so how are you going to ensure that transition between terms, that the confidentiality of some documents, such as resumes and applications, don't become compromised?
So I remember one thing that we did at the start of, the very first thing actually that we did as a portfolio when we did our meeting, Jared touched upon, well not really touched upon, he dove into confidentiality. And having that being kind of the first things that were said was super, had a big impact on me. So definitely when doing that transition, I will, not enforce, but I will emphasize how important confidentiality is and keeping document and not looking, I have access to the, of course, the HR email, right? And the applications go through there. And Jared didn't even have to say, oh, don't look at it. But it was kind of emphasized already, at the start, that to not look. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but I definitely did not look at those documents. I didn't look at the other candidates. And that's something that Jared was able to help me with. Yes.
Sorry, what's your name again?
Kyle.
Kyle.
Yep. So I have a question for Raven on behalf of Caroline. What are you going to do to mitigate bias in the recruitment process?
To mitigate bias? I definitely need to know when I'm doing the recruitment. For example, for my own portfolio, if I know this person that is applying, so I will have either, if I know them very well, I'll have someone else step in and assist me, so that, or even have me not doing the interview, but having everything set in place just for them to do the questions. Definitely taking out that factor is super important. If I'm doing it for a different portfolio, say I'm doing it for the finance portfolio, and Megan knows the applicant, then I would have someone else step in her place, so that she doesn't put in her, of course it's still her portfolio, it's still very important, but if she knows that person very well, then there's going to be bias, so it's best to have, say, the president step in, or her director.
Oh, and sorry, what's your name?
Cindy.
Sarah. Oh, Cindy. Okay.
So I have a question for Anika. It's just branching off the program innovation role. You talked a lot about it, but I just wanted to know if you had a specific vision for it, or what was the executive team thinking about? Was this going to be new events they're implementing, or sort of similar ones?
Yeah, I think so far what I have thought for the program innovation, like I have said a bunch of times, is to be able to reach out to audiences that BAS hasn't been able to reach before. So I think with this, maybe not necessarily events, but initiatives that we can do that are smaller scale, but we'll still be able to reach an audience and like low cost, so that it'll give an incentive for people who may not have the resources to be able to attend our higher cost events can come out to, if that's what the factor is holding them back. And I think, again, probably not bigger events just because of the resources it does take for that. It will take a longer period of time to plan that event. Thus, I think limiting what we can do with that portfolio. But yeah, I think the main point of the portfolio is to be able to reach audiences that we might not have been able to.
So at this time, I just want to let everyone know here that the audience question period is now over. So I'm just going to be talking about the voting right now. All the voting will be happening from February 8th at 12 a.m. to February 9th at 11:59 p.m. All voting will be done online, and the link will be provided to your SFU webmail. We will be being in contact with the Student Engagement Office, SEO, so that you guys will receive the emails. And this the ballot is only eligible for all business majors, joint majors, and minors. Does anybody have any questions? We're good? Solid? Okay. And that's the end of it. Yeah, so thank you everyone. I'd like to thank the candidates today for taking the courage and time to coming to the debate and answering some really tough questions. I mean, those aren't easy. And if I was put in that position, I'm not too sure if I could do the same. So